As the sun began to set, Ibarra stepped into Elias's boat at the lakeshore. Elias appeared gloomy and worried. "Forgive me for imposing on you like this," Elias said solemnly. "I wanted to meet without anyone overhearing us, so I chose this boat. We can come back in an hour." "You're mistaken," Ibarra replied with a forced smile. "I must go to that town over there," he pointed to a distant belfry. "I had a slight mishap on my way here." "What do you mean, mishap?" asked Elias. "I ran into the alferez, and he insisted on accompanying me. I thought of you and remembered he knows you, so I made up a story about going to that town to get him to leave me alone. I'll have to stay there until tomorrow afternoon when he will likely look for me." "I understand," Elias replied, "but you could have invited him to join us." "I guess he wouldn't recognize you since he only saw you briefly once." Ibarra sighed as he thought of Maria Clara. What did you want to talk about? Elias looked around. They were now some way off from the shore, dusk settling in so that the bright, full moon appeared in the sky. "I have come to convey the wishes of many who are suffering," Elias stated seriously. "Suffering? What are you talking about?" Elias recounted his conversation with the leader of the bandits, leaving out the man's threats and uncertainties. Ibarra listened intently until silence filled the space after Elias finished. "They want radical reforms in the military, the church, and the administration of justice," Elias clarified. "What they seek is more humane treatment from the government." "Reforms? In what ways?" Ibarra asked. "There needs to be more respect for human dignity, more security for individuals, less brute force in the military, and fewer privileges for those who easily misuse their power." "I don't completely know you anymore, Elias, but your thoughts seem different from most people's. You have to understand that though things are far from perfect now, making changes could lead to worse conditions. I could ask my friends in Madrid for help, but it wouldn't achieve anything substantial. Besides, while I know these systems have their faults, they're currently necessary." Elias raised an eyebrow in disbelief. "Do you believe that evil is sometimes necessary to achieve good?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly. "I see it as a harsh remedy we use to cure a greater illness," Ibarra explained. "Right now, our country is like a sick body, and the government thinks it must use strict methods to heal it." Elias shook his head. "It's a bad doctor who only seeks to silence the symptoms without understanding the root of the problem. The civil guard exists to terrorize and control, but they often fail at their only job, to stop crime. Our society can only judge individuals harshly if it affords them the means to perfect themselves morally. In our country's case, the lack of connection between the people and the government leads to greater individual irresponsibility." Ibarra frowned, contemplating Elias's comments. "But if we weaken the civil guard, towns would become less secure," he argued. "The towns have had the civil guard for 15 years now, and there are still bandits and robberies," Elias retorted bitterly. "What protection has this security brought us? People are more afraid of the guards than of actual criminals. The guards often abuse their power, preying on ordinary citizens, all while criminals continue to thrive. Rather than serving justice, they serve their authority. Yet this institution deters criminals by instilling fear," Ibarra countered. "I think it actually creates more criminals. Before this institution formed, most crime was committed by those driven by hunger. Once satisfied, they resumed honest living. Now criminals are lifelong offenders, hunted down out of fear and suffering from cruel punishment. The system we have promotes more violence rather than reducing it." "I recognize that there are some problems with the current system," Ibarra admitted, "but that doesn't mean we should discard what works. There are benefits to these forces." Elias argued further, those benefits come at a high cost, a sacrifice of freedom. We shouldn't fear each other. Instead, shouldn't the government inspire respect? Ibarra sat quietly, mulling over Elias's points. The boat drifted on the calm waters, illuminated by the moonlight. "What else do these people want?" Ibarra asked, breaking the silence. "Reform in the church," Elias replied in a low voice. "They ask for more protection against the religious orders. Are those orders not part of our history? Have we forgotten the gratitude we owe them for bringing us faith? They have protected us from worse abuses." Elias looked stunned. "You call that gratitude, sir? Acts of generosity may often carry strings attached. Favors that come with expectations are not true gifts. We should remember how these beliefs are packaged as goods that we pay for dearly. Our true duty should be to demand the rights that were denied to us instead of simply accepting their imposed faith. But without that faith, where would we be?" Ibarra pressed. "We lost our independence in that transaction. The cost for what you call faith is our dignity," Elias said firmly. "Yes, the early missionaries offered kindness, but does that let the descendants exploit us today? Just because earlier priests sacrificed for us, should we condone the abuse of their unworthy successors? Our nation demands reform to match our present needs and circumstances." Seeing that Ibarra was still skeptical, Elias expressed his frustration. "Isn't it clearer than ever, given what you and your family have suffered?" "I do not wish to diminish your suffering, Elias," Ibarra said gently. "I've spent my life in the comforts of education in Europe. I understand some of your pains, but remember, I have my own troubles. Despite all this, I perceive the broader interests of my country." Elias's eyes dimmed as he considered Ibarra's words. "You think the friars are essential to maintain control, to keep us peaceful?" "Yes, it's the belief held by many defenders of the status quo." "Well, to rely on that ignorance is a sure way to fail," Elias asserted. "A government that governs through deception and fear has failed its people. Thank you for your kindness in sharing your thoughts. But what do you want from me?" "Stay," Ibarra implored. "It's important that we understand each other on this fundamental issue." Elias hesitated, shaking his head. "I'm not persuasive. My background seems to be a disadvantage to you, and voices of the privileged always have more weight. With every word you speak, you seem to confirm this inequality. I find myself doubting my beliefs simply because they do not align with what you say. In light of your story, perhaps I should tell those suffering to put their faith in God and their strength rather than in men. Elias, your words stir deep emotions in me and make me question a lot. I want to understand more about your past, if you are willing to share," Ibarra said earnestly. Elias paused, contemplating. "If my story can help clarify our situation, I will share it. But remember, there are layers beneath what you see." And with respectful sincerity, he began to share his tale, one that reflected the struggles of many like him.